future of safety and opportunity for Americans of every race, color, religion, and creed.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. This is special coverage of the Republican National Convention on Bloomberg Television and on radio. The second night of the Republican National Convention is underway. President Trump has already made one appearance, pardoning a reformed bank robber, and is about to make a second appearance just minutes from now when he is going to naturalize a group of new U.S. citizens. Then later in the hour, of course, we're going to hear from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, as well as the First Lady, Melania Trump. Welcome now someone who worked for President Trump until recently, Linda McMahon, who served in his administration as head of the Small Business Administration. She was a co-founder of the WWE, and she is now chair of American First Action, a political action committee that supports President Trump's campaign. Also with us are Bloomberg political contributors Jeannie Zaino and Rick Davis. So Linda, thank you so much for joining. Welcome. As we wait for the president here, give us your initial impression of how this convention's gone so far. What's the message for the American people?
I think the message for the American people is that America is on the right track. And it is the land of opportunity. It's a land of innovation and invention. And I think what the president is, what the messages that are being reinforced relative to the president and his leadership is about his tax cuts, his deregulation, his creating the right trade deals, unleashing the power of energy to create jobs so that America will continue with that economic prosperity that we had since he's come in. You know, we had a very, very strong economy, the strongest in the world, and then we were hit with the virus from China that just knocked the props out from under everything. But he reacted quickly. He closed the border from China, then he closed the border of those coming in from Europe, and he went into, you know, he really went right to work setting up the task force to study the virus. And I have to say, this virus was perplexing. No one knew what to do at first. You know, we did close the country. We did shut things down because we tried, you know, to get a handle on it. We didn't want to overwhelm our medical systems. And once we got that under control and started to change the curve, you know, on the virus, then the president realized and knew that the economy would be killed if we didn't have to start to reopen. So he worked with the scientists to give regulations or suggestions to the governors on both sides of the aisles on how to open up and get the economy back on track. And I think we're seeing that working. I mean, for the past 3 months, we've created almost 9 million jobs. You know, and we came out of the Great Recession. By comparison, it took 4 years to create 9 million jobs, and President Trump has done it in about 3 months. So I think we're on the right track.
And that's what I'd like to focus on. No question the economy is coming back somewhat, but how long is it going to take? Because even creating 9 million jobs, we still have something like 15 million people unemployed. And right now, the pattern looks like it's going to take a while to get back to where we were before.
Well, I think it is going to take a while, and that's why Congress needs to get back and do its job and get this fourth phase of support from the government, you know, to our small businesses, to the citizens of America, because we know that this is a hard uphill battle. You know, PPP did so much to help small businesses, and you know, small businesses. I think those that had well, let's just look at it for a second. Those that had about 10 employees were the ones who received the majority, about 70% of PPP. And if you think about that, a majority of those were minority businesses. And so it really was a helping hand. But we need more now. We need more stimulus. And we need Congress to come back and do its job and get that fourth phase moving. The president decided not to wait. And he signed some executive orders to get some money flowing again into the hands of our people through the unemployment insurance. And I think now about 30 states are on board to start doing that. But we need to get Congress back, and we need to get this enacted so we can keep this train moving in the right direction.
And the executive orders, as worthy as they may be, appear to be taking longer than if we had legislation. Why don't we have a deal, Linda, as we continue to wait for the president?
We don't have a deal because Congress is not here to get the deal done. I think, you know, the Democrats they just wanted too much. They wanted too much money. They didn't want to compromise in ways that I think that made sense, for the president. He was very willing to compromise on many of the issues, but they just couldn't come to terms. And then Democrats left town.
You have your finger on the pulse, really, of small business particularly, and you are, of course, an accomplished businesswoman in your own right. How bad is it out there at this point for small business?
Well, small businesses, they do take the brunt of what's happening. But as I said, PPP really did help many small businesses. There were about 5.1 million loans, I think, made under PPP. And wow, and that really was a big help. But again, there needs to be more. But small businesses, if you look at the riots that are going on as well, too, they're tearing down a lot of small businesses. Some of them were getting back on their feet and just starting to reopen.
So
and then suddenly,
Linda, please, I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize
again.
for the President of the United States. Please stay with us. We're now going to go to the convention and the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, as he walks in to a Marine salute now in the White House.
Acting Secretary Wolf, I present to you 5 candidates for naturalization representing 5 countries.
On behalf of everyone here today, I'd like to express my gratitude to you, Mr. President, for hosting this naturalization ceremony here at the White House. To our candidates, it is my honor to administer the oath of allegiance and welcome you as our fellow citizens. Candidates for naturalization, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I hereby declare an oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the U.S. when required by law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations, you're now citizens of the United States of America. On behalf of the Department of Homeland Security, it is my honor to call you my fellow Americans. Mr. President, I want to again commend you for your dedication to the rule of law and for restoring integrity to our immigration system. Thank you for hosting such a patriotic celebration here at the White House today.
Thank you. Congratulations, that's fantastic. It's really great, thank you. And I want to thank Acting Secretary Wolf, doing a phenomenal job in so many ways. Today, America rejoices as we welcome 5 absolutely incredible new members into our great American family. You are now fellow citizens of the greatest nation on the face of God's earth. Congratulations. Great going. You followed the rules, you obeyed the laws, you learned your history, embraced our values, and proved yourselves to be men and women of the highest integrity. It's not so easy. You went through a lot, and we appreciate you being here with us today. You've earned the most prized, treasured, cherished, and priceless possession anywhere in the world. It's called American citizenship. There is no higher honor and no greater privilege, and it's an honor for me to be your president. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to recognize the 5 new citizens who join us today. Robert Martin Ramirez Alcazar is from Bolivia and has been a lawful permanent resident of the United States since 2013. Robert? Hi, Robert. He and his wife are raising 3 beautiful children. In 2017, Robert achieved the dream of starting his own business, a construction company that now employs 5 workers. Robert says, "I love this country. I want to respect the law. America has helped me so much in life." Robert, thank you very much for your devotion.
Thank you for the opportunities to the United States.
Well, thank you, and good luck with that company. Soon you'll have hundreds of employees, I think, right?
It will.
Could happen. It will. Rima Gideon is from Lebanon and is the proud mother of 3 children. Rima speaks English, Arabic, and French, and earned a degree in psychology. In other words, she can figure me out. She now works as a daycare teacher in Virginia. Rima says, "I feel blessed to be a loyal citizen of the greatest country in the world, a country that has given me the opportunity of a lifetime to realize my potential and my dreams." Rima, congratulations. It's really great. Thank you. Well, that's very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sudha Sundari Narayan is a phenomenal success, born in India, came to the United States 13 years ago. Sudha is a talented software developer, and she and her husband are raising 2 beautiful, wonderful children, the apples of your life, right?
Yes, they are.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations. Fantastic job. Thank you. Nehmet Abdelzim Awalo Said is from Sudan, and that's a beautiful name, and has been a lawful permanent resident since 2012. She is the married mother of 3 beautiful children, earned a master's degree and PhD in animal nutrition from the University of Wyoming, great place, great state, and she is a trained veterinarian. She's also worked as a substitute teacher for the Alexandria Public School since 2004. That's fantastic. Well, Dibat, thank you very much, and congratulations. It's my honor to be with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Salah Abdul Samad has been looking forward to this day since he arrived in the United States from Ghana in 2015. Salih speaks 5 languages and works the medical field. Salih says that the American citizenship means everything to me in my life. It cannot be measured or quantified. I have the chance to work hard and succeed in life, to know that I am in the safe country like America. That really is something, because I know they have my back. Salih, thank you very much. Congratulations. Fantastic job. Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
With the rights and freedoms each of you now enjoys as citizens, there is no dream beyond your wildest reach, because Americans can do anything. Today, you have also accepted the profound duties and responsibilities that come with American citizenship. By swearing the oath of allegiance, each of you has entered a sacred and unbreakable covenant with our nation. You have pledged your undying loyalty to the American people, the American Constitution, and the American way of life. The history and heritage of the United States are now yours to preserve and pass down to the next generation. Our culture, our traditions, and our values are now yours to uphold and live by. The rights so dear to every American, granted by us and granted by God and enshrined in our glorious Bill of Rights, are now yours to support, protect, and defend. As citizens, you're now stewards of this magnificent nation, a family comprised of every race, color, religion, and creed. United by the bonds of love, we are one people sharing one home, saluting one great American flag. Congratulations again to all of you. May God bless you, and may God bless our great country, America.
Thank you so much. We have been listening to President Donald Trump in pre-recorded remarks to 5 new citizens who were just naturalized in his presence. Still with us is Linda McMahon, former SBA administrator, and our contributors, Rick Davis and Jeannie Zaino. First of all, thank you, Linda, for remaining. Sorry to interrupt you. Understand why. Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could follow up on the point you made about perception of the country being on the right track. One of the things that we see in the polling data is the country really doesn't perceive that it's on the right track. About 70% of the public polls indicate that the public thinks it's on the wrong track, except for Republicans, who overwhelmingly think it's on the right track. So you have this great divide in the country. 90% of the Democrats think it's on the wrong track, 70% of independents, and then the Republicans overwhelmingly think it's on the right track. You can't win with just Republicans. So how do you convince independents especially, who are suspicious of the track we're on as a country, that it's going to get better soon?
Well, what we're seeing at America First in our polling is that we are definitely seeing the polls tighten. President Trump is very definitely, in my opinion, going to win this election. And I think the country is on the right track in so many ways. It's very difficult when you're in the middle of the COVID crisis and people are still, in their homes. They're not all back to work. They can't enjoy the freedoms they normally have. They're worried about their kids being able to go back to school. So if they're asked a question during the polling about is the country on the right track, they might at that point say, maybe it's on the right track, but right now I'm feeling it needs to change. But what we are seeing is that change. We are seeing less of the focus on COVID and now more of a shift towards the economy. What does the future hold? When am I going to get back to work? When can I reopen my business? And those are the things I think that are more on the minds of Americans now. So I think you'll see the polling start to shift more, and that we are on the right track, and that President Trump is the one to take us there.
So, Ms. McMahon, what would you like to see Congress and the White House agree to in terms of helping small businesses at this point? What are the 1 or 2 things you would like to see in a bill, if they could get one together, that comes out specifically targeting small businesses and the kind of assistance they need at this point as we're entering September?
I haven't looked all through the particular items that are being suggested in the new bill, except that I do know that the president does want to continue payments to individuals. He does want to continue to make sure that employers do have money to keep their employees there. I think we want to make sure that we see taxes not increased, as Joe Biden wants to increase them. And I know that the president wants to make sure that businesses are looking at rules and regulations that will allow them to reopen and not be impediments to their reopening, so that we can keep our economy on the right track and keep us growing.
Linda, what we've heard so far from the convention is an awful lot about what President Trump has done. For good and sufficient reason, he's an incumbent after all. Do you have a good sense of what he would do in the next 4 years and how it might differ from what happened in the first term were he to be reelected?
Well, I think in the next 4 years, what we're going to see is that economic recovery, which is on pace to recover even more quickly than economists had even projected. I think we are seeing now more people returning to work, more jobs created than had been anticipated. I think the president is going to continue to work on fair and reciprocal trade deals. I think he's going to make sure that we have tax cuts now for the middle class, even more so than there were before. He's going to try to keep spurring small businesses and larger businesses too, by lower regulations. I think he's taking on the pharmaceutical companies to make sure that we can lower drug prices. All of these things he's been talking about, they're the pillars, I think, of what you'll see going forward in the next 4 years.
Linda, this is Rick Davis again. But during the Democratic convention, Joe Biden made a big pitch of what I'm going to do in the first 100 days. My first day in office in January of next year, if he's elected, he's going to, do certain things related to COVID and the economy. Is there that kind of a plan in the works for the Trump administration?
Well, I don't know if the president has to say my first 100 days in office, because he's going to continue doing the things that he's doing now. And I think that's the advantage of reelecting Donald Trump, is that he already has plans in place. He already has put things in motion in our country that got really sidetracked or stopped as a result of COVID. But when he had reduced taxes and regulations, when he had put programs in place to unleash our energy, when he had already renegotiated NAFTA with the USMCA to improve on trade, and now he's going to bring more and more jobs back to our country. He's talking about incentivizing those companies that will bring their manufacturing back to the United States. We want to make sure that our supply lines are here. We don't want to be beholden, if you will, to China or even to other countries for the very basics that this country needs. And you'll see more and more of those policies put into place to continue what he's already started.
Linda, when we talk about the growth that we saw in the first 3 years of President Trump's term, some of it was really driven by that massive tax cut. We heard earlier today from Larry Kudlow, the senior economic advisor to the president, who says there's going to be some more. This is what Larry Kudlow had to say at the convention.
Now, looking ahead, more tax cuts and regulatory rollback will be in store. Payroll tax cuts for higher wages, income tax cuts for the middle class, capital gains tax cuts for investment, productivity, and jobs.
So, Linda, that begs the question a little bit. Do we need to just keep cutting taxes in order to keep the growth going?
Well, I think we saw that cutting taxes before very definitely spurred that growth. And I think now that we would look to what I was just talking about, was incentivizing businesses to bring back their manufacturing, keep creating more manufacturing jobs here in the country, clearly does put us on pace to have that continued growth. And to restore, we've got some ground to make up right now. And COVID's going to take a while for us to get back to where we were. But I think then we'll see these other measures put in place that'll even help us grow more.
Linda, thank you so very much for spending time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. That's Linda McMahon. She's chair of American First Action and also former administrator of the SBA. For a view from the White House on tonight's events, we welcome now Bloomberg White House reporter Mario Parker. So, Mario, as we watch this, it occurs to me the president is something of a showman, I think it's fair to say. And we've had a pardon given already. We've had 5 new citizens sworn in. Is this sort of like the last State of the Union when he gave out some Medal of Honor, some Medals of Freedom, and got some military families back together?
This is exactly in the president's wheelhouse. The president gained fame largely on the heels of The Apprentice TV show. So this is in his wheelhouse. Production, surprises, just really the showmanship is really in his toolbox. And so that's what we're seeing today, which is similar to what we saw earlier this year with the State of the Union, where he gave Rush Limbaugh, for example, the Medal of Freedom. He promoted Tuskegee Airmen. He gave a young black child a scholarship to go to a better school. So, no, we're seeing a continuation of that.
Okay. Mario, it's Jeannie. And just on this point that you're making, because he obviously is quite a showman, have you heard anything from the White House or the campaign on the president's reaction to the first night and the fact that, as we're hearing, at least live television ratings were down and not quite what they were in 2016 and not matching what the Democrats got, which made some of us speculate that maybe there would be something in the offing either tonight or in the next couple nights to raise those. But barring that, are you hearing any reaction from the president or the campaign about that?
Well, we had a call with the campaign earlier today that it hosted with reporters, and they kind of skirted the issue of ratings. They said they hadn't seen them just yet. But they also sounded pretty confident and pretty upbeat about the way the rest the convention started, but also the rest of the week as well. They said there's more surprises in store vis-a-vis what we saw tonight, and they felt really good.
Hey, Mario, Rick Davis, good to see you tonight. I was curious if you had any insight that you could give us on what else might be doing at the White House this week. We've seen the incumbency in full display today with 2 appearances from Donald Trump at the White House, and now the whole crowd will be there for Melania's speech. What can we anticipate from Donald Trump himself before he takes the nomination by the grasp on Thursday night?
Well, we know that the campaign has told us that he'll make an appearance each night of the festivities, if you will, and that'll culminate on Thursday with his speech from the White House lawn. And so we'll see plenty of appearances from the president. They're supposed to be at Fort McHenry. Vice President Pence is going to be at Fort McHenry tomorrow. And so we'll see. We're really seeing some of the pomp and circumstances associated with the White House.
Okay, thank you so very much to Mario Parker. He is Bloomberg White House reporter. In the meantime, the Asian markets are trading. Let's get a check on how they're doing from Sophie Cameron. So, Sophie, we're waiting for Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, who's sure going to talk about China. But are the markets over there paying any attention to this at all?
Yeah, certainly, David. We will be paying attention to these policy overtures from the U.S. as well as from China when it comes to Europe. You have China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi on a week-long tour in Europe in order to charm policymakers there as it looks to shift its reliance away from the U.S. and towards other partners as well as to Asian neighbors. And with that, Beijing is seeking to reduce reliance on the dollar given those shifts in trade flow. So we are seeing the yuan trade at the strongest since January 20th, back at levels before China went on the Lunar New Year break. I want to highlight another theme that's in play here in Asia. We have some semiconductor names falling in Taipei as well as in China on a report that Taiwan plans to tighten controls on chip investments in China. So this development likely to reinforce Xi Jinping's call for technological self-reliance while also opening up China's economy and encouraging domestic demand. And as China's recovery is assessed, the latest Bloomberg poll of economists see the chance of a recession on the mainland in the next 12 months decreasing to 13%. Now, over in Hong Kong, just want to highlight Alibaba shares at a new high in the city after Jack Ma's Ant Group filed for dual listings in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, set to raise about $30 billion in total. And switching on the board for a snapshot of listings in Hong Kong, Chinese firms are dominating, making up about 95% of all funds raised so far this year as the market becomes more attractive in the face of U.S. sanctions, David.
Fascinating. Thank you so much to Sophie Cameron coming to us from Hong Kong. Still with us here in New York, we have Rick Davis, as actually in Washington, and Jeannie Davis here with me in New York. So, Rick, I don't want to call you part of the old guard, but it does strike me there's quite a difference between these two conventions, the Democrats on the one hand and the Republicans on the other. Last week, we saw a lot of people who had served as president or run for president, wives of them, things like that. This week, we're not seeing anybody who's been around that long, really. Isn't this really Donald Trump's convention?
Yeah, Donald Trump continues to play the role of outsider. You don't see any of official Washington on the virtual broadcast during this convention. The one representative today from the United States Senate, Rand Paul, is considered sort of an outcast in the caucus of Republicans in the Senate. So Donald Trump sort of sticks to the script. He came fighting Washington, the institutions and the people who were in it, and he continues to import his supporters to show that he continues that fight. So it's nothing unusual, but it is unusual for a Republican convention to have so little senior leadership.
Well, and Jeannie, it strikes me that the president's making an interesting calculation here. If he wins, it's all his win. Nobody else helped him do it. On the other hand, if by any chance he were not to win, boy, it's going to be all his fault.
It absolutely is. And let's not forget, you can't govern in the United States by yourself. So, if he does win, he still has to depend on Republicans in the Senate and in the House to help him do all the things that he wants to do. And the president knows this. He famously came to office promising to build a wall dependent on Congress to fund that. So, it is a risky move to alienate other members of your party if that's indeed what's going on here. So for me, from a governing perspective, I do worry about the outcome of this. As we've seen, I think 27 former members of Congress endorsed Joe Biden because they feel excluded from what is the new Republican Party under Donald Trump.
It's a very different approach for sure. Thank you so much to Jeannie and to Rick. Stay with us, please, because right now, for our TV and radio audiences, we're waiting for the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. He's going to be giving an address just a few minutes from now. And in order to set that up, let's bring in now our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Sound On weekdays on Bloomberg Radio. He is, of course, the one and only Kevin Cirilli. So, Kevin, give us a sense of what we expect from Mike Pompeo tonight.
Secretary Pompeo has recorded remarks when he was in Israel. It will be a brief commentary, about 3 minutes according to the schedule, and he will lay out the case. Speaking as a private citizen, simply because given Hatch Act regulations, he's not technically able to speak in his capacity as Secretary of State, but obviously the title follows no matter where the individual is on the planet. Beyond that, from a policy standpoint, it's an opportunity for him to talk about the administration's support for Israel, and also an opportunity for him to potentially set the stage for his own political legacy. He is often viewed as someone who could also run for president in 2024. He had previously served as a congressman and then, of course, as the CIA director. So from that vantage point, this is a really important moment. It comes following other foreign policy developments in the past week. Jared Kushner and the National Security Advisor O'Brien announcing that they will be a part of the first ever flight to travel from Israel to the UAE. So other key developments on the foreign policy front as well.
Yeah. Kevin, so we're hearing that Joaquin Castro, in his capacity as chairman, is going to be investigating Mike Pompeo's speech, as you mentioned, for potential violations of the Hatch Act. What do you think the Democrats are going to be able to do as they move forward on this? I know the president has responded and said it's not a violation because the president doesn't fall under the Hatch Act. What are you hearing about that? And also there was talk that this was a potential breach of State Department regulations themselves.
Earlier today, Jeannie, I spoke with the chairwoman of the Republican Party, Rima McDaniel, and I asked her specifically about this issue, and she said that the RNC has paid for all of the travel, the production costs, and all of the cameras surrounding the Secretary of State's taped remarks. And so from that perspective, the RNC is saying that they are completely compliant with the regulations.
Hey, Kevin, this is Rick Davis. I was kind of curious your take on this. I mean, Pompeo is obviously going to get the credit for talking about the Middle East peace plan that's starting to take root, obviously, between UAE and Israel. But we know Jared Kushner has been the architect of that Middle East peace plan for some time, and he's not even addressing the convention. Does that surprise you at all?
No, it does not. In fact, Jared Kushner's role within the administration in recent years has been incredibly behind the scenes. Now, I did speak with him just the other week about that deal with Israel, and he says that it's only the beginning in terms of other Middle Eastern counterparts that are going to come on board. But he also is deeply tied to the political apparatus surrounding the administration. And this is just a conversation that I would add into the conversation that you all were just having, which is regardless of the outcome on November 3rd, the notion that the Trump administration and their most ardent supporters and influencers would disappear on November 4th, should they lose, is really not a political reality. All of the polls suggest that on the issue of immigration, for example, the base of the Republican Party is still very much with the president. He enjoys 90-plus popularity. So from that vantage point, regardless of the outcome, the Trump apparatus is privately having conversations that they're here to stay.
So, Kevin, we're just moments away from Mike Pompeo's recorded remarks right now. But I will note he went on to Sudan, as I understand it, after taping this in Jerusalem. Does that give us any indication, a hint maybe Sudan might be the next one after UAE to normalize relations with Israel?
That is exactly where my mind went, David. And there's been so much speculation about who the next state would be on that, whether it would be, for example, Saudi Arabia or another state. We just don't know. 3 countries have already joined.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a big event. I mean, whatever one thinks, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, to have a third nation now, an Arab nation, normalize relations with Israel. It's been 25 years since Jordan, after all. Once again, we are keeping our eye on the convention, and we're about to hear from Mike Pompeo in recorded remarks coming from Jerusalem. Thank you so much to Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Swirly. And now here's Mike Pompeo.
Speaking to you from beautiful Jerusalem, looking out over the old city. I have a big job as Susan's husband and Nick's dad. Susan and Nick are more safe, and their freedom's more secure because President Trump has put his America First vision into action. It may not have made him popular in every foreign capital, but it's worked. President Trump understands what my great fellow Kansan President Eisenhower said. For all that we cherish and justly desire for ourselves or for our children, the securing of peace is the first requisite. Indeed, the primary constitutional function of the national government is ensuring that your family and mine are safe and enjoy the freedom to live, to work, to learn, and to worship as they choose. Delivering on this duty to keep us safe and our freedoms intact, this president has led bold initiatives in nearly every corner of the world. In China, he's pulled back the curtain on the predatory aggression of the Chinese Communist Party. The president has held China accountable for covering up the China virus and allowing it to spread death and economic destruction in America and around the world. And he will not rest until justice is done. He has ensured that the Chinese Communist Party spies posing as diplomats in America are jailed or sent back to China. And he has ended the ridiculously unfair trade arrangement with China that punched a hole in our economy. Those jobs are coming back home. In North Korea, the president lowered the temperature and against all odds got the North Korean leadership to the table. No nuclear tests, no long-range missile tests, and Americans held captive in North Korea came home to their families, as did the precious remains of scores of heroes who fought in Korea. Today, because of President Trump, NATO is stronger, Ukraine has defensive weapon systems, and America left a harmful treaty so our nation can now build missiles to deter Russian aggression. And in the Middle East, when Iran threatened, the president approved a strike that killed the Iranian terrorist Qasem Soleimani. This is the man most responsible for the murder and maiming of hundreds of American soldiers and thousands of Christians across the Middle East. And you'll recall, too, that when the president took office, radical Islamic terrorists had beheaded Americans, and ISIS controlled a territory in the size of Great Britain. Today, because of the president's determination and leadership, the ISIS caliphate is wiped out. It's gone. Its evil leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is dead. And our brave soldiers, they're on their way home. The president exited the U.S. from the disastrous nuclear deal with Iran and squeezed the Ayatollah, Hezbollah, and Hamas. The president, too, moved the U.S. Embassy to this very city of God, Jerusalem, the rightful capital of the Jewish homeland. And just 2 weeks ago, the president brokered a historic peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. This is a deal that our grandchildren will read about in their history books. You know, as a soldier, I saw firsthand people desperate to flee to freedom. The way each of us can best ensure our freedoms is by electing leaders who don't just talk, but who deliver. An American hostage, imprisoned in Turkey for 2 years, Pastor Andrew Brunson, said upon his release that he survived his ordeal with these words of Scripture: "Be faithful, endure, and finish well. If we stay the course, we will." May God richly bless you, and may God bless our great nation, the United States of America.
That was U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressing the Republican National Convention on a taped message from the King David Hotel, the roof of it, actually overlooking the old city of Jerusalem. We want to come back now to Rick Davis and Jeannie Zaino for some thoughts. So Jeannie, I want to come to you on this, actually. As I look at that, you could say the president accomplished some things. Certainly the UAE deal with Israel is a major accomplishment, no question about it. Fighting Islamic State, some incompletes, China, North Korea. At the same time, is it more important in terms of the election that he's coming to the people from Jerusalem, particularly for the evangelical vote?
I do think that is critically important, and I agree with you. That is a big win. It is a historic moment. I think my concern is that the coming to the convention from a foreign nation as the first Secretary of State to speak at a convention in over 75 years, that it does take away a little bit from the import of what they were able to achieve in the Middle East context. And you're right. They still have incompletes there. China, certainly, North Korea, as you mentioned. But I think when we listen to Mike Pompeo, we cannot forget that he is also one of several speakers that we've seen in the last couple days and will continue to see who have designs on running for president post-Trump.
I want to keep the audience up to date on what we're watching here, actually. President Trump now has arrived in the Rose Garden outside the White House. There's a crowd there because we're getting ready for the First Lady's remarks. She is, of course, Melania Trump. In the meantime, Rick, we'll try to squeeze in a question here now. How important is that evangelical vote for this president?
Oh, I think it's critical. You saw today was his first real presentation of a number of social conservatives on the agenda at the convention. They are core to his campaign strategies in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio, in Missouri. So he really needs to fire him up. And he's done a lot for evangelicals in his administration, but he's got to constantly remind them because he what he gives us, he also takes away in other policies that cross-pressure them. And we know that part of the strategy today was to calm them down and to make sure that they are good to go and will turn out in big forces on Election Day.
So, Jeannie, I'm curious about China, another thing that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo mentioned there. Which way does it cut? Because I can't see a whole lot of difference, they would disagree, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden when it comes to our position on China.
Yeah, and that's been one of the big question marks is how do they differ? There's been a lot of tough talk, certainly from Joe Biden. It's unclear as to what he would do and how he would approach China differently, or would he, go back to the way the Obama administration had done it. And certainly Donald Trump has been at times, more flattering and at times less flattering. And of late, Mike Pompeo has been particularly tough on China. But yet it's unclear what their approach is going to be going forward if they get another 4 years.
Rick, do we think voters care about China?
Well, generally, you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about foreign policy and national security in an election campaign. That being said, Mike Pompeo's speech tonight was one of the very few times it's been addressed so far at the convention, and probably for the balance of the convention. So usually you want the president to handle that commander-in-chief role himself. So it is a policy issue. It's not going to drive votes. Now, what this administration has done is made it about domestic issues. So they've gone after Huawei. They've gone after some of these other companies in order to convince the American public that he is defending us against the China incursions.
So talking about domestic issues, as I say, we're about to hear from the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump. And I'm curious, Jeannie, as we're watching and now walk down there, we have 1 minute to go. What does Donald Trump need out of his wife tonight?
I think she needs to humanize him, and they've been doing that throughout the campaign, to soften him up. We've seen him talking to first responders to make the case that when the Democrats say he can't be trusted, he is not somebody who you would want to spend time with. She is here to make that case, and we have seen her do it successfully, although in 2016, of course, she had the charges that she had used remarks that Michelle Obama had made earlier, so that's something that people are curious about how she handles it tonight.
And she will be doing it from a rose garden that she oversaw the restoration of back to what Jackie Kennedy originally had back in the early 1960s. And now we are seeing the First Lady come out to the podium to applause from the crowd gathered there. Fortunately, because there was a thunderstorm earlier, there was some concern she wouldn't be able to do it. Here's First Lady Melania Trump.
It seems like just yesterday that we were at our first convention, where my husband accepted the Republican nomination and then became our 45th President of the United States. Yet the energy and enthusiasm for who should lead this nation, it is real today as it was 4 years ago. I know I speak for my husband and the entire family when I say we have not forgotten the incredible people who were willing to take a chance on the businessmen who had never worked in politics. We know it was you who elected him to be Commander-in-Chief, and we know it is you who will carry us through again. We were humbled by the incredible support then, and we are still grateful today. I want to acknowledge the fact that since March, our lives have changed drastically. The invisible enemy, COVID-19, swept across our beautiful country and impacted all of us. My deepest sympathy goes out to everyone who has lost a loved one, and my prayers are with those who are ill or suffering. I know many people are anxious and some feel helpless. I want you to know you are not alone. My husband's administration will not stop fighting until there is an effective treatment or vaccine available to everyone. Donald will not rest until he has done all he can to take care of everyone impacted by this terrible pandemic. I want to extend my gratitude to all of the healthcare professionals frontline workers and teachers who stepped up in these difficult times. Despite the risk to yourselves and your own families, you put our country first, and my husband and I are grateful. I have been moved by the way Americans have come together in such an unfamiliar and often frightening situation. It is in times like this that we will look back and tell our grandchildren that through kindness and compassion, strength and determination, we were able to restore the promise of our future. Businesses stepped up and volunteers stepped in. People were eager to share ideas, resources, and support of all kinds with neighbors and strangers alike. It has been inspiring to see what the people of our great nation will do for one another, especially when we are at our most fragile. Speaking of strength and determination, we recently celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. Yesterday, on the North Lawn of the White House, we unveiled an exhibit dedicated to women's suffrage. The exhibit called on children from across the country to send art honoring the meaning of this important time in women's history. When I was judging the entries, I reflected on the impact of women's voices in our nation's story, and how proud I will be to cast my vote again for Donald this November. We must make sure that women are heard and that the American dream continues to thrive. Growing up as a young child in Slovenia, which was under communist rule at the time, I always heard about an amazing place called America, a land that stood for freedom and opportunity. As I grew older, it became my goal to move to the United States and follow my dream of working in the fashion industry. My parents worked very hard to ensure our family could not only live and prosper in America, but also contribute to a nation that allows for people to arrive with a dream and make it reality. I want to take the moment to thank my mother and father for all they have done for our family. It is because of you that I'm standing here today. I arrived in the United States when I was 26 years old. Living and working in the land of opportunity was a dream come true, but I wanted more. I wanted to be a citizen. After 10 years of paperwork and patience, I studied for the test in 2006 and became an American citizen. It is still one of the proudest moments in my life because with hard work and determination, I was able to achieve my own American dream. As an immigrant and a very independent woman, I understand what a privilege it is to live here and to enjoy the freedoms and opportunities that we have. As First Lady, I have been fortunate to see the American dream come true over and over again. I have met many inspiring women, children, parents, and families who have overcome life-changing issues that include addiction, homelessness, family members who are ill or have passed away, abuse of all kinds, and many other challenges that would make most people give up. The past 3.5 years have been unforgettable. There are no words to describe how honored, humbled, and fortunate I am to serve our nation as your First Lady. After many of the experiences I've had, I don't know if I can fully explain how many people I take home with me in my heart each day. From brave soldiers who give up so much so that we can be free, to children of all circumstances who I have met around the world. Thank you for inspiring me. It is my greatest honor to serve you. When I speak to members of the military, despite sacrificing time with their families, experience the fear of war or suffering loss, they have no regrets about serving our country. The same goes for their families and the families of first responders who often watch their loved ones walk out the door, not sure if or when they will come home. When I speak to families who have lost someone, the pain mixed with pride I hear in their voices is something I think about often. So thank you to all who serve our country in the military and as first responders. And thank you to the families who wait for them. You are our heroes in your own right. I have also been moved by the many children and families I've spent time with at hospitals, schools, and other locations around the world. Children who are dealing with pain or illness that would break even the strongest adult. Parents who are grateful to wake up every day and see that their child is still alive. These families are a testament to what faith and medicine, strength and science can do. On my first international trip as First Lady, my husband and I visited places of great significance to the three major religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. One special memory from that trip is of a young boy I had privilege of visiting while at Bambino Gesù Hospital in Rome, Italy. While there, I read the little boy a story and learned that he and his family had been waiting for a heart for a very long time, and he had a grim prognosis. His situation brought my staff and me to tears, and we spoke of a little else as we flew to Belgium for the next part of our trip. Upon landing just a few hours later, we learned that a heart had been donated and would be going to the little one. I think about him often, along with so many amazing and strong young patients across our own country. More profound and sadly unavoidable examples of our country's strength and character have occurred in the communities that have been impacted by natural disasters. Hurricanes, tornadoes, and flooding may show the ugly side of Mother Nature, but in their aftermath, they can show us a beautiful side of humanity. My husband and I have visited many places that have been affected by natural disaster, and we are deeply moved by the strength of the people who have lost everything and the kindness of neighbors and communities. The common thread in all of these challenging situations is the unwavering resolve to help one another. I recognize the stories I just told about people who survive extraordinary circumstances. But Donald and I are also inspired by the millions of Americans who wake up each day with a simple yet courageous goal of providing for their families and keeping them safe. You are the backbone of this country. You are the people who continue to make the United States of America what it is, and who have the incredible responsibility of preparing our future generations to leave everything even better than they found it. Just as you are fighting for your families, my husband, our family, and the people in this administration are here fighting for you. No matter the amount of negative or false media headlines or attacks from the other side, Donald Trump has not and will not lose focus on you. He loves this country, and he knows how to get things done. As you have learned over the past 5 years, he is not a traditional politician. He doesn't just speak words. He demands action, and he gets results. The future of our country has always been very important to him, and it is something that I have always admired. In fact, it is to help ensure a better future for our next generation that I launched Be Best, my initiative to help children achieve their fullest potential. Be Best has one simple goal: teaching youth about the importance of their well-being, both mentally and physically. This also includes understanding online safety and the dangers of opioid and drug abuse. Through Be Best, my office and I have been able to highlight people, programs, and organizations that are doing extraordinary things in our country and around the world. I continue to believe that by shining a light on these positive examples, others across the country and globe will become inspired to do their part for our next generation. Helping children is not a political goal. It is our moral imperative. When I think back to a defining moment of Be Best, my mind goes to a trip I took to Africa. On that vast and beautiful continent, I was able to visit the countries of Ghana, Malawi, Kenya, and Egypt. One of those visits, in particular, had a profound impact on me. Ghana, on the coast of West Africa, was the first stop on my trip, and I experienced firsthand its warm people and their traditions. While there, I visited the Cape Coast Castle and learned more about the beginning of a cruel and often deadly journey in the era of the slave trade. I was horrified when I listened to the guide tell me so many inhumane stories, and I gained new perspectives. It is time in our history we must never forget, so that we can ensure that it never happens again. Like all of you, I have reflected on the racial unrest in our country. It is a harsh reality that we are not proud of parts of our history. I encourage people to focus on our future while still learning from our past. We must remember that today we are all one community comprised of many races, religions, and ethnicities. Our diverse and storied history is what makes our country strong, and yet we still have so much to learn from one another. With that in mind, I like to call on the citizens of this country to take a moment, pause, and look at things from all perspectives. I urge people to come together in a civil manner so we can work and live up to our standard American ideals. I also ask people to stop the violence and looting being done in the name of justice, and never make assumptions based on the color of a person's skin. Instead of tearing things down, let's reflect on our mistakes, be proud of our evolution, and look to our way forward. Every day, let us remember that we are one nation under God, and we need to cherish one another. My husband's administration has worked to try and effect change when it comes to issues around race and religion in this country. He's the first president to address a special session of the United Nations General Assembly to call upon countries across the world to end religious persecution and honor the right of every person to worship as they choose. He has made substantial investments in our historically Black colleges and universities. This president also continues to fight for school choice, giving parents more options to help their children flourish. my husband knows how to make a real change. From the day that I met him, he has only wanted to make this country the best it can be. For many years, I watched him grow concerned and frustrated, and I'm so proud to see the many things he has done in such a short time. America is in his heart. So while at times we only see the worst of people and politics on the evening news, let's remember how we come together in the most difficult times. And while debate rages on about issues of race, let's focus on the strides we have made and work together for a better tomorrow for everyone. Our administration has also devoted historic resources and produced life-saving results by raising awareness around opioid addiction and drug abuse, especially for children. When so often the headlines are filled with gossip, I want to take this moment to encourage the media to focus even more on the nation's drug crisis. This disease is one that affects everybody. It pays no attention to race, age, or socioeconomic status. Addiction has touched every part of our society in some way. And now, more than ever, we have programs and medicine to combat it. We just need to talk about it openly. And you, the media, have the platforms to make that happen. To the media industry and as a country, I ask that we all commit to helping in our fights against drug addiction by talking about it even more. Especially as we battle the COVID pandemic, we need to remember that suicides are on the rise as people who are struggling with loneliness and addiction feel they have nowhere to turn. Parents, please talk to your children. Teachers and caregivers, pay attention to signs of addiction. Lawmakers, pass legislation that allows those who ask for help to do so safely and without fear, and to provide resources for organizations that help people impacted by addiction. When the stigma is removed, people will no longer be ashamed to ask for help, and lives will be saved. And if you are struggling with addiction, there is no shame in your illness. Please seek help. You are worth it. In my next 4 years as First Lady, I will continue to build upon the best and work with individual states to pass legislation to take care of our most vulnerable. I plan to continue the work I have started with children in foster care, as well as the minority communities and tribal nations. I want to ensure children are being protected and communities have the resources needed to combat drug addiction and child neglect or abuse. Like my husband and the administration, I will continue to encourage education that supports a child's individual needs. It is vital that children are given the building blocks to succeed. I also look forward to continue my work to restore the People's House, which is a lasting symbol of pride for our nation. I believe this iconic home needs to be cared for and preserved so it can be enjoyed by the people of this country and visitors from around the world for years to come. I'm passionate about this beautiful house, the grounds, and all they represent. And now, I have a special message for the mothers of this country. This modern world is moving so fast, and our children face challenges that seem to change every few months. Just like me, I know many of you watch how mean and manipulative social media can be. And just like me, I'm sure many of you are looking for answers how to talk to your children about the downside of technology and their relationships with their peers. Like every parent in this country, I feel there are so many lessons to teach our son and responsibilities as his mother, but there are just not enough hours in the day to do it all. I remind myself that I'm more fortunate than most and still have days that I look for wisdom and strength to do the very best I can for him. To mothers and parents everywhere, you are warriors. In my husband, you have a president who will not stop fighting for you and your families. I see how hard he works each day and night, and despite the unprecedented attacks from the media and opposition, he will not give up. In fact, if you tell him he cannot be done, he just works harder. Donald is a husband who supports me in all that I do. He has built an administration with an unprecedented number of women in leadership roles and has fostered an environment where the American people are always the priority. He welcomes different points of view and encourages thinking outside of the box. I know I speak for my husband and the family when I say we are so grateful that you have trusted him to be your president, and we will be honored to serve this incredible country for 4 more years. As you have heard this evening, I don't want to use this precious time attacking the other side, because as we saw last week, that kind of talk only serves to divide the country further. I'm here because we need my husband to be our president and commander-in-chief for 4 more years. He is what is best for our country. We all know Donald Trump makes no secrets about how he feels about things. Total honesty is what we as citizens deserve from our president. Whether you like it or not, you always know what he's thinking. And that is because he's an authentic person who loves this country and its people and wants to continue to make it better. Donald wants to keep your family safe. He wants to help your family succeed. He wants nothing more than for this country to prosper, and he doesn't waste time playing politics. Almost 4 years ago, we went into Election Day completely underestimated. Despite what is being said again this year, I know, just as you do, that Americans will go to the polls and vote on the behalf of their families, our economy, our national security, and our children's future. To vote for those ideals is not a partisan vote. It is a common sense vote, because those are goals and hopes that we all believe in. I believe that we need my husband's leadership now more than ever in order to bring us back once again to the greatest economy and the strongest country ever known. God bless you all, your families, and God bless the United States of America.
We've been listening to the First Lady, Melania Trump, addressing, as you can hear, a live audience in the Rose Garden, and that audience now is standing and giving her a standing ovation. Still with us are Rick Davis, Jeannie Zaino, and our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Swirly. So, Rick, let me start with you. It strikes me at least this is a very different tone, very different substance, actually, from what we've heard from this convention. She talked a lot about compassion, including for, we now have the President of the United States kissing his wife, Melania Trump, congratulating her on her remarks, about compassion, particularly for those who suffered from COVID-19. We haven't heard that anywhere else before. We talked about inclusion, and there was a fairly impassioned plea for fighting the drug crisis.
Yeah, you haven't heard her talk much about the opioid crisis, and she really suggested that that would be something that the media should actually pay some attention to. Of course, that was an element of her speech where she sort of very subtly bashed the media, like most in the Trump administration. She didn't use the term fake media, but she sort of contributed to the idea that the media is the problem. But I would say it's significantly different than the rest of the family and the message that they're carrying, including her husband, the president. So it was a refreshing change from the really attack offensive messages we've seen. A classy speech by the First Lady, clearly about what she feels her responsibilities are in this administration and some of the great experiences she's had. Whether that's compelling to anybody as far as the election goes, I don't know, but it does help define her as First Lady, which we haven't seen much of. So this was a unique opportunity to sort of hear from her as a very private person.
Jeannie, it strikes me that often when people give remarks, we say, who was the audience? There was no question here who the audience was. It was women. She talked about the 19th Amendment, the anniversary of women's suffrage. She also, at one point, directly addressed mothers.
Yeah, absolutely. Calling them, I think, warriors. Yeah. And it was clearly aimed at women. We know suburban women so critical. And of course, last night and today, or yesterday and today, we've seen the campaign try to make this case to people who are concerned about the president's tone, but who aren't quite sold on Joe Biden, to say he is somebody who is empathetic. He is somebody who gets things done. He is somebody that you can count on and turn to. And she was there to make those cases. And I agree with you and Rick about the tone. I also think substantively, she talked longer about the pandemic and more sympathetically than anybody. And she also talked about things that we haven't heard, particularly racial unrest. We haven't heard a lot about that. She talked about that. And she talked about this insecurity, people dealing with addiction and suicide as a result of the pandemic. So substantively, she hit a lot of points that we haven't heard in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, and to connect those two up, Kevin Sorrell, our chief Washington correspondent, the COVID-19 situation and some of the insecurities, particularly on the part of mothers. I'm mindful of the fact that a lot of voters are looking at the situation with their kids right now, whether they're going to go back to school or not, what it does to their working situation.
Precisely, and the First Lady really taking it head on to suburban women in her remarks. I'm told that that is precisely the audience that she had in mind. You mentioned this, David, and you're absolutely correct that the school closures really have the potential to bench so much of the U.S. workforce. 18 million Americans might not be able to return to work because of these school closures. And that's why you're hearing, whether it's from the First Lady or in other comments from Senator Tim Scott or through Republican surrogates throughout the week, that reopening the schools is very much an issue that they want to have and to be on the forefront of, including school choice. Because you look at the charts and from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and you see women in particular are more negatively impacted economically as a result of this pandemic and the economic ramifications of that. So what you heard there from the First Lady was trying to win back some of those swing voters. I think Ivanka Trump will also speak to that, I'm told, later in the week. And they've got to make inroads because the polls have them trailing there. And in 2018, many of those Trump districts swung back to Democrats. David?
Okay, thank you so very much to Kevin Sorrell, our chief Washington correspondent. Great reporting right through the night. He'll be with us, of course, for the rest of the week for the convention. But right now, I'd like to go back, actually, to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who spoke earlier and specifically talked about China and some of the grievances that the Trump administration has against China during his address to the convention.
The president has held China accountable for covering up the China virus and allowing it to spread death and economic destruction in America and around the world. And he will not rest until justice is done. He has ended the ridiculously unfair trade arrangement with China that punched a hole in our economy. Those jobs are coming back home.
And we'd like to get China's likely reaction to these remarks, as well as his view of this election overall. And we turn to Tom McKenzie, our colleague anchor of the Bloomberg China Open. So, Tom, what is the Chinese reaction likely to be? Are these particularly hostile words? Is this just more of the same?
Well, really, Mike Pompeo has become the bête noire for the Chinese Communist Party since that speech at the Nixon Library. And in fact, on Monday of this week, you had a blow-by-blow rebuttal of that speech by China's state media. We'll wait to see if they respond to these comments. I doubt we'll get anything particularly new. On the trade front, it's worth pointing out that from the Chinese perspective, they are keen to keep those lines of communication open with the US on the trade front. They don't feel that they've given away too much on that phase one trade deal, so they want to keep that going, certainly certainly. It's worth pointing out, in terms of the virus, and Mike Pompeo addressed this, of course, domestically, there is an argument to suggest that the Communist Party of China, the government, has actually curried a lot of favor with its citizens by the way that it's handled the virus quite successfully here in the mainland. You only have a dozen or so cases reported every single day in a population of 1.3 billion people. But it's outside, it's that international arena where, of course, China has paid a price, most notably, of course, with the US and with the mood of President Trump. There's also a reminder today, you have the Chinese coming out and accusing the US of flying a spy plane over northern China during a live fire drill. And that's just really a reminder that you do have US and Chinese military assets in quite close proximity, both in northern China and also in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait as well. The Chinese saying that was a blatant provocation.
Okay, Tom, thank you so much for the terrific reporting. That is Tom McKenzie, anchor of the Bloomberg China Open. Now for a couple of final closing thoughts, we bring in our contributors Rick Davis and Jeannie Zaino. Jeannie, let's start with you. What did you take away from tonight?
You know, I think we had a little bit more of the same. You know, you had still the sort of red meat for the base, which was this sort of, you know, negative view of what a Biden, you know, United States might look like. And we heard that from some of the speakers tonight. But we also heard an attempt to try to humanize President Trump, which I think we're going to keep hearing, and to try to make the case that it is a kinder and gentler Trump.
Okay, Rick, how about you?
I think we saw on display a really strong use of incumbency. The presentations by Donald Trump from the White House, it'll be debated for some time whether these were an appropriate use of the White House, the People's House, for political purposes. But nonetheless, you know, his power of the presidency was on firm display today. And I think that the significant change of tone from the First Lady's speech, which was the longest speech we've heard in this convention since the start, so different from the previous speeches, not only of her family members, but also of the other people speaking at the convention tonight. So interesting night.
Yeah, very interesting. I agree with that, Rick. Thank you so much to Bloomberg political contributors Jeannie Zaino of Iona College and Rick Davis of Stone Court Capital. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to have night 3 of the Republican National Convention. Vice President Mike Pence is the featured speaker, and he's going to accept the nomination in a speech coming from Fort McHenry in Baltimore. That's where the words to the Star-Spangled Banner were written. This is coverage of the Republican National Convention on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
When everything around us, including the way we work and live, has been interrupted, uninterrupted service is peace of mind. Juzi from customer support is responding to a 500% increase in daily call volume, no matter what. We keep on, so you can keep on.
This is a market that over the past few weeks has made it clear it wants to go higher. It got a little spooked by the idea that geopolitical tensions are rising.
Look at this. This couldn't be anywhere but here. But it's just amazing to see, because from television it doesn't look that large. And when you walk next to it, it's amazing.
I think it was on the top of a Boeing 747.
That's right. It was shuttled here. That's what the joy of the Smithsonian is, the stuff. And you can't just replace that. You've got to really experience it.
In terms of iron ore itself, demand remains strong in China. Blast furnace utilization rates are quite high, and that appears to be holding up quite well.
Welcome to Bloomberg Markets Asia. I'm Haslinda Amin in Singapore.
And in Hong Kong, I'm Rishad Salamat. Let's have a look at what's going on market-wise, Has.
Well, that's right. Asian markets mostly lower despite the S&P and the Nasdaq posting new records. We have global stocks stalling near records in February. The CSI 300 index down 0.8%. It has been swinging between gains and losses. Of course, we have the CSI 300 MSCI China stock still looking pretty cheap despite the recent rally. Offshore yuan, Rich, breaching 6.9 versus the dollar. That could mean a path to 684.57, a level not seen since January. The Kospi down 0.6%. Weakness in the Kospi for the first day in 4. Investors somewhat getting nervous ahead of the BOK rate decision tomorrow. The BOK seen cutting its GDP growth estimate amid the new surge in virus. And the benchmark in Thailand down by 0.1% in the first few minutes of trade. And we have the Thai GDP expected to pick up to 4 to 5% in 2021. That's according to the Finance Ministry. And the benchmark in New Zealand, well, stock resuming trading after being stalled earlier today as well as yesterday after getting disrupted for a second day after a cyber attack halted activity on Tuesday, Rish.
Yeah, and we're going to get Indian markets underway in, 25 minutes from now. Just having a look at the prospects of the session there. Pretty much flat. In fact, the Nifty ended Tuesday pretty much where it started. Having a look at what's going on with the bond market there. 10-year yields just on 6.129. And this really is the central bank, the RBI, will resume a Fed Reserve-style operation twist. This is after weak demand at 2 successive auctions that have happened. And we've also got inflation concerns there, which are driving up yields. And some of those inflation concerns may well be misplaced because food prices may well be under pressure with the monsoon season, which has seen more rain than usual. Rupee there at just off 5-month highs. And we've got part of that strength for the Indian rupee coming through, perhaps arguably from the recent dollar weakness. And talking of the dollar, pretty much flat there, the Bloomberg US dollar index. Let's get some context on all this, and we get over to co-anchor David Inglis. Now, David, what's standing out so far across assets for you?
It looks to be not an equity story, at least for today. So I'm going to flash it for you, and I'm going to sort of just ignore that part of this board that's coming up. What is standing out, though, as far as, I guess, just to pick one part, if we had to talk about, I think, one stock, Alibaba standing out, as you can see there. That's on the back of the Ant Financial listing. The other thing I want to point out, and you mentioned dollar weakness, have a look at where the Chinese currency, is trading. The reason I bring that up is about, what time is it now? About 60, 70 minutes back, we had the latest results from the latest survey on the Chinese economy. And I guess to summarize everything, you have slightly more growth, you have a little bit higher inflation, and you have slightly higher rate expectations expected out of the Chinese economy. And increasingly so, I think part of the conversation around the currency might then need to move into, how we talked about U.S. exceptionalism last year. It might be the opposite this year, just looking at these forecasts and if this continues. In fact, I think a great visual, if we could change this up, have a look at this bar chart. Smaller and smaller likelihood, and with good reason, of a recession in China. It's down to 13% now from a size 50% just a couple of months back. Just put everything into context on this sort of China's first in, first out of this pandemic, and also not so much a recession, but out of a downturn.
Dave, let's talk about Japan. A lot of speculation around Shinzo Abe's health. What do we know, and do you think this is being reflected in the market somehow?
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint what people are talking about, because I think we then risk fueling speculation when we don't need to. But here's what is clear. On Friday, Kyodo News is saying that Shinzo Abe will be holding a press conference. So that's something, at least on the agenda, we can put ahead. Now, in the event that he bows out, JP Morgan's out with some notes and some research here, and they're saying, you look at dollar yen, that's going to surge to about 100, and obviously that in partly takes away from the whole Abenomics story, although when you look at some of the other notes that have come out recently, we're not there just yet. And I'll leave you with this: implied vol, 1 week, 1 month don't so far reflect any jitters in the market. The 3-month you can see there is primarily, I would imagine, a function more of U.S. elections coming up. Back to you guys.
David, just looking at inflation, and there's a big debate going on. In fact, I think we've got a fairly meaty piece on the Bloomberg terminal about this issue. Is there inflation, and why even talking about it now?
Well, there have been beats.